Hi, everybody. This is Samantha Furlow. Welcome to week 6. I'm so happy to be here with you and to start talking about siblings and parenting more than one child. Even if you don't have multiple children, I promise you there will be times during your parenting that you absolutely will have multiple children under your care. Maybe neighbor kids coming over to play, maybe cousins coming to visit, maybe birthday parties or sleepovers or participation in youth activities, stuff like that. So hopefully you will still be able to glean some info from this. So we like to start each week by celebrating victories. I want you to take a minute and think about some victories that you've had over this past week. There are no victories that are too small for celebration. This could be that maybe you were able to finally finish that project in your kitchen that you hadn't been able to get to for too long. Maybe your kiddo did their 15 minutes of reading without there having to be an argument. Maybe you're potty training your toddler and you finally got to this first time that they were able to go potty on their own without having to be reminded. Any victory is worth celebrating, and we really want to get into the practice of recognizing especially those small victories, because that's what gives us energy to keep going forward. So today's topic, the takeaway message that we're trying to get out of my portion of the lesson is that parents can support the growth and development of all the children in their home by acknowledging negative feelings and treating children as individuals rather than comparing them positively or negatively with their siblings. Parents can nurture all the children in their family by acknowledging and validating each of their children's experience of the world. So our big takeaway message, we do not want to compare our children with each other. We want to recognize and treat each one as the individual and serve their needs individually and not get stuck in what I call even Stevens. Our kids are not exactly the same as one another, and so their needs are going to be different as well. So if I was writing a learning goal today, what I might write a learning goal about is I want to think of 3 new ways to treat my children as individuals. That could be your learning goal. You could have a different learning goal, like why shouldn't I treat my children exactly equally or practice even Stevens, or maybe neither of these is your learning goal and you want to wait for Miranda's lesson where she's going to talk about sibling rivalry. This video gives us a nice explanation of how we get a little bit stuck in expecting our children to learn emotion regulation techniques after they have already hit that point of emotional, after they've already hit that point where they no longer have emotional control. So I'm going to go ahead and press play, and hopefully we can glean some info from this.
In previous videos, we've talked about the importance of practicing various types of plans with our kids or clients, such as what they can do when they get upset and how they can be successful with various activities and social interactions. Practicing helps reduce the amount of processing needed in the moment because they've already gone through the situation. Let's talk a little bit more about what's happening on a cognitive skill level during escalation and how practicing helps everyone. Let's take the case of a general what can you do when you get upset kind of plan, which we call a reactive plan. Without a plan that's been practiced, we're demanding that the person use several cognitive skills in the moment of their escalation, which is a problem because whenever any one of us gets escalated, our cognitive skills drop. That's right, being mad makes us dumb, and our brains may revert to more primitive responses to handle the stress. This means that without practicing the plan, our kid or client will need to understand what's going on, stay calm enough to figure out an appropriate course of action, think through the consequences of each possible course of action, and then follow through, all while resisting impulses coming from the more primitive parts of their brain. What we have to remember is that people with developmental disabilities, mental health issues, trauma, or still developing brains struggle with many of the skills that are needed to achieve emotional regulation. There isn't a structure or piece of the brain that emotionally regulates us, but rather emotional regulation is the result of multiple executive functioning skills working together to calm us down, oftentimes in an instant. When you don't have these skills, even on a good day, you're missing critical tools, which may mean that you're more likely to get upset over small stressors, or that when you do get upset, you engage in behaviors beyond just being mad, like physical aggression, property destruction, or other challenging behaviors. By practicing the plan, we can help the person shortcut to emotional regulation more easily because we're helping them process information and make the right choice ahead of time. After we identify some coping strategies, we can have our kid or client practice them. We may practice randomly or set a structured time. Then, when escalation happens, we can prompt the person to follow the plan, which now they don't have to come up with on their own in that moment. It would be best if our prompt was nonverbal, such as pointing to an object that we designated means it's time to follow the plan. Of course, when we were practicing the plan, we point to the object to get that practice going. Now, instead of having to use all of the skills needed to emotionally regulate on their own, our kid or client can think about the plan which we've already discussed and practiced. They may resist at first, which is why it's important that we avoid talking. When we talk, we demand that their brain use various cognitive skills, which is the last thing they need right now. Our hope is that, even if they struggle at first, as they have more time to think about the plan, they'll begin the calming process. Once they get to the point of following through on the plan and engaging in a coping skill, hopefully they'll calm down quickly and with fewer challenging behaviors. As the person's brain continues to develop, or as they continue to practice emotionally regulating through these plans that you make with them, our goal is that they will naturally begin to use their coping skills independently in their everyday lives, because they will have had more practice in using them successfully and seeing their benefit. If the plan you make and practice doesn't work, wait until the person is completely calm and open to having a discussion. This may need to happen on a different day than the day of the escalation. With both of you calm and not invested in the moment, you can talk about why the plan didn't work and make a plan to help it be more successful the next time. Of course, make sure that you practice any changes that you make. Perhaps you just need to try the original plan again without making any changes, but do a few extra practice sessions. In our next video, we'll talk about common unhelpful responses that we as parents or professionals may have when someone escalates and how we can avoid those responses. As you know, our videos are free to everyone, and so I'm completely reliant on those who watch them and believe in me to keep them going. Please consider giving to us monthly on patreon.com/organbehavior, or support us by contacting your local disability and mental health organizations and ask them to have me come to your area and conduct a training or workshop. Of course, you can support us by subscribing to our videos here on YouTube, liking our page on Facebook, and now we're on Twitter at Organ Behavior. Thanks for watching.
I found that video to be really helpful. It was a great reminder that emotion regulation is not one piece of the brain, but rather a few different areas of the brain working together. So I thought that that was very, very helpful for me, and also a really good reminder that we cannot teach behavior management skills, emotion regulation, in the moment that our emotions are out of control. So if we've already hit the emotion dysregulation point, we cannot learn a new skill. We have to wait until we are not in that point to learn and practice that new skill. Okay, let's keep going on with siblings. I want you to grab your yellow book and you're going to turn to worksheet 6.1.1, and it's going to say tips for parenting more than one child. And there's a matrix on here with two different sections. On the left side, there's going to be an important idea with some important facts in it. And then on the right side, we will answer some questions. So I'm going to give example answers to the questions. You can write down my answers, or you can come up with your own. So the first important idea is that we must acknowledge all feelings. I want you to think about a time that you shared a frustration that you had, or a sad experience that you had. You shared some sort of negative emotion with somebody in your life that you trusted. Maybe it was your parent, maybe it was your friend, maybe your spouse, maybe an in-law. And you were sharing this with them to vent, and to get it off your chest, and to complain or seek validation about what was going on. And I want you to specifically think of a time where that other person, that listener, responded not with validation, but instead responded to you in a way that told you or made you feel like your complaints were incorrect or wrong or not valid or unfair for you to have. And I want you to remember what that feeling felt like. Some of us become defensive. Some of us are angry. Some of us feel like this person doesn't know me or understand me. But ultimately, it did not build a bond between you and that other person. Instead, it told you that you're not going to go to that person when you're seeking that type of support anymore. And instead, you're going to find somebody else. Well, our kids are exactly the same way. They are just little adults, is really all that they are. And they also are not going to want to come back to you when their feelings are not acknowledged, or when they're not validated, or when they're told that those feelings are wrong. It's important that we recognize that all feelings are valid. I feel what I feel, and there is no changing it. Where there is change is what my reaction to it is, or how I process that feeling. But me feeling something is never wrong or invalid. I get to feel whatever it is that I feel. And if I'm a child and I go to my parent and my feelings are invalidated, I am not going to go back to them next time. And if we can think back to week 5 last week, where Miranda taught us about building that family identity, this is one of those important pieces in making sure that our kids are coming to us, because if we don't provide them support, they are going to find that support somewhere else. It's usually going to be from their peer group. And I always encourage parents to think back to when they were 14, 15 years old, and remember the kids that you hung out with. Do you want those 14 and 15-year-olds guiding your children, raising your children, making the choices and giving advice for your children? Of course you do not. Of course you want to be the one your child comes to. Well, in order for that to happen, this is one of those important ways that we build that bond, is we acknowledge those feelings. So let's look at the worksheet. And the important idea says, children have lots of feelings when new children are added to the family. So this example it's giving us is specifically tied to when our family is expanding. So children have lots of feelings when new children are added to the family. Children have a harder time managing stronger feelings when we try to talk them out of these feelings. So it's not that we want to convince them these feelings aren't there. We want to help them process them and explore them. To help children cope with family changes, we need to let them know that their strong feelings are okay and that we understand. This helps them make room for more positive feelings. So on the response side, it says, write down a validating sentence that you could say to a child who, A, doesn't want his mom to have another baby. So what I wrote is, I understand you didn't choose for this to happen. Let's talk about how you feel about having a new baby. I want to validate that what he feels is valid, because it is, he feels it. And then I also want to explore why he's feeling that way. I would encourage you to ask him, what do you think will be different once the baby is here? Kids have all sorts of wild ideas. Sometimes they think that they have to be a grown-up, and they have to give away all their toys, and they have to give away all their clothes and their bed, and the baby gets all of it. Maybe they think it means that that we have to move because everybody has to have their own bedroom, and instead him and baby are going to share a room. Maybe he doesn't want to share a room with the baby. Whatever it is, we need to hear where this feeling is coming from, and sometimes we can resolve those anxieties, or sometimes we have to teach some skills in order to cope with those feelings. So B, the second example was, the child doesn't want his dad to remarry or move in with a new partner. So something that could be said is, I understand this change is not what you have chosen. Let's talk about how you feel about moving in with XYZ. Maybe the child thinks that this new partner, this new spouse, is taking the place of their old parent, and they don't want to trade the parent that they've known and loved their whole life for this new person. And it's really a conversation of, well, actually, you're going to have an additional parent. There's not somebody that's being taken away. So this is important to, again, hear what it is their concerns are and work from there while also validating those feelings. It's important that we realize that validation is not saying, I also experience the same feeling, or I also feel this same way, or that there's no reason to have to find a way to cope or to explore or to accept that this is what's happening. Validation is just saying, I understand that you feel this way. I understand that that is your truth. It's a practice of empathy, and it's something that we all have to work on as parents, is to empathize with our children. Okay, moving on. So to the second important idea, it says treating children as individuals. And this focuses specifically on comparing one child to the other. We will go deeper into these comparisons and labels in week 8, but just for right now, we want to think about our experience growing up in being compared to our siblings. So this question asks, were you ever compared positively or negatively to a sibling? So there's positive comparisons, which say, I wish your brother would work as hard as you do in school. And sometimes we think that, oh, well, that compliments the child that is receiving that. And the negative is, why can't you work as hard as your brother and get good grades too? And what some of us tend to think is that the child that is getting the positive favor, that this is a positive experience for them, and this is good for them, and that they'll feel good from it. But actually, they feel guilty or they feel pressured, and it's not helpful at all. I also think that when we're doing that negative, we're not doing it to be mean. We're doing it because we think it's going to be motivating in some way and going to be helpful. And also, it's neither of those. It's not motivating and it's not helpful. Instead, the child that is out of favor also feels guilty or pressured. Instead of comparing, we want to just describe. We want to describe each child as an individual. So we're going to practice that on the response section of this worksheet. So comparing our children to each other, either positively or negatively, harms all the children in the family. It causes resentment, pressure, guilt, and competition. Instead of comparing, deal with each child individually, whether to acknowledge an accomplishment or to give correction or direction. So what I am stating to one child does not need to impact the other. So on the response side, we have, it seems like we have two kids. One has a clean room and one has a messy room. And the A1 says, has a messy room and needs to clean it up. What is something I can say that just describes this child without comparing to their sibling? So what I came up with was, before we can go to the park, you will need to pick up all your dirty clothes and put them in the hamper. It describes what needs to be done. It also has an incentive in there, and it doesn't even mention that there's another sibling. The B example says, has a clean room but has a sibling with a messy room. So how can I compliment this accomplishment without comparing? I'm impressed with your well-organized room. It does not have to be a snide remark about the sibling at all in order to be effective. And in fact, it shouldn't, because it would do more damage. So the third example on this page is, or third important idea is, we want to give according to individual need. How many of you have been caught up in trying to treat your children completely equal? Maybe even found yourself counting, adjusting, giving more, or taking away to try to be fair. Treat your children as individuals when it comes to giving. Give according to the individual need of the child. This is where we get caught up in that even Stevens, where we end up counting out every individual grape to make sure they have the exact same amount, or every single French fry to make sure they have the exact same amount. So one way that we can do this is we ask each child what they specifically want or need. And so ask one child, would you like a big bunch of grapes or a little bunch? And then we ask another child, how about you? Are you feeling like a big bunch or a little bunch? Now, maybe I do this and my second child still just responds based on what the first child said. That's okay. That they do that. I would say that's pretty normal. However, if I ever wish for them to start assessing what their own needs are instead of being focused on that even Stevens, I need to be practicing this all the time. And ultimately, it's going to teach each child to ask themselves what it is they need. We don't all need the exact same thing or the exact same amounts. So on the third part of the worksheet, it's the important idea goes further into say, trying to treat children equally can wear a parent out. Instead, give your time and attention to fit each one's individual needs. So on the response side, it says, write down a time when you tired yourself out trying to treat your children equally. So one example I wrote for me was trying to make Christmas presents look equal when they asked for different things. For instance, maybe I have one child that asks for a new soft pillow, and I have another child that asks for a bead set for bracelet making. Those are going to have different costs associated with them. I shouldn't base how much I spend on a pillow or on beads based on what the other's gift is, because they have separate costs. They are made differently. They serve different purposes. The packaging isn't going to be the same, so I don't want to get stuck in this even Stevens based on like how big the present is. I can really wear myself out trying to make this turn out perfect. So it says, what could have been done differently in the situation above in order to give time and attention to the individual needs of each kid. So I said kids asking for different presents will mean different presents. Now I use this poem to help. Sometimes something they want, something they need, something they wear, and something to read. So this this is what I follow now, and it kind of gives me some guidance on, okay, this is how I can feel like I'm giving everybody a fair opportunity to tell me something that they want and something they need. And then it's okay that it looks different, or the packaging is different, or the price points are different, because I am making my choices based on the individual needs of the child. So for the last part of this session, I want you to grab your purple workbook, and you're going to turn to handout 6.1.2, called Treating Children as Individuals. So you're going to fill this out for all of your children. It only has spaces for 2 of them. Maybe you'll draw lines through the boxes in order to make room for more of your children, or maybe sometimes it's going to, maybe you'll find a way to make it work another way. But as an example, I filled it out for one of mine. So I wrote, child's name is Stella, and personal strengths or talents of this child. So Stella is a master animal trainer. She is so good at animal training. She makes amazing salsa. It's only 5 ingredients, and it's so good. And she remembers and passes down the family traditions, such as recipes. So what are some encouraging words I can say to this child about their strengths? So I said, you keep our family history alive. You are so patient with dogs, and I learn a lot from you. This salsa is so yummy, I want you to teach me how to make it. So all of this is going to be encouraging for her. It's going to be validating, and it's also going to, it can also help to build our bond even stronger, because she can be teaching me some things. What are some challenges or struggles this child deals with? So I wrote that Stella loves to sleep until 1 p.m. This is painful for me. However, I don't want to say that to her. And so what are some encouraging words I can say to this child about their struggles? So what I said was, I'm so grateful that you got up early today to help me do the yard work. It really means a lot to me when you help me with these chores. So it's important that I'm just encouraging and complimenting that behavior, and I'm not hyper focusing on also getting a backhanded compliment in there. So if I would say something to the effect of, well, thank you for helping me today, you never do any other day, that's not going to encourage her to want to continue to get up early to help me. Instead, I want to just make her feel good and validate and encourage that behavior I saw today. So go ahead and finish this up for your one of your assignments this week, and you will send it in. If you have questions, please reach out to your coach, and we're happy to help you with it. And that's it for me this week. I hope to see you all Thursday. Take care.